Shalom. Several months ago, I made a video on Rav Kook and his position with regard to Judaism and its participation in general culture. He expressed great admiration for what he saw as a cultural revival in Europe, uh, and he praised the fact that it was a secular revival because since Europe, and perhaps he had in mind the Ottoman Empire as well, uh, are not under Jewish, strong Jewish influence, and they're predominantly Christian or Muslim. That he felt that the best thing for a culture would be to be separated from those religions that are not exactly the true religion according to the Jewish perspective. He called for a renewal of Jewish culture, but said in this case, in the case of Jewish culture, there should be no disconnect between the artistic form, whether it's literature in particular or other fields, music, and Jewish Judaism, meaning Jewish belief, Jewish ideas, Jewish spirituality. Now, I have just recently acquired the 4-volume study of Yosef Avivi on the Kabbalah of Rabbi Kook. Really promises to be an excellent read. I know Yosef Avivi for years, and I was surprised, I guess pleasantly surprised, that the first text that he decides to include in this book is a letter, an open letter. It's called by Rav Kook, concerning the dearth of literary creativity, for lack of a better word, though thank God he didn't have to deal with this, notion of creativity, but that's what he's talking about. And it's a very powerful letter written with tremendously emotions that want to burst forth. He begins the letter by saying, I'm not writing this letter because I have the power, I have the strength to write a letter. I'm writing this letter because I don't have the strength to keep quiet anymore. It's just been bubbling up inside of him. And what he's talking about is the lack of literary creativity, new, fresh literature from a Jewish perspective. He writes this letter in 1905, after he's already been in Jaffa for about a year, and he addresses it to the yeshiva students who are, I guess, his primary audience. And the main point, again, it's something to stress here because it's a point where we have to see how this is long and is still relevant, if at all, is that the pen is the most powerful, potent weapon around. He says quite clearly, he says, Ha'et koveshet olam. The pen is conquering the world. He expresses a strong understanding of how the written word, literature, I guess he has in mind fiction and nonfiction as well, have a tremendous impact on public opinion and on just the general spirit of the public. And he's in mourning for the dearth of anything comparable from the Jewish perspective, not necessarily Jewish authors who may be writing books of one sort or the other, but something that would convey to his mind the main ideals, the great richness, the spiritual depths of the Jewish tradition. I suppose he has in mind very much the Kabbalistic tradition, but not limited to that. And he says that we're not. It's not to say that the people in the yeshiva world aren't writing and aren't producing literature. They're producing tons of it, but they're basically, to use an American or an English phrase, they're treading water. They're just grinding over, chewing over the same old problems, and digging deeper into them, but without really adding anything new. Now, he bemoans this fact and calls for change, calls for renewal, but there are two problems with this call. First, he doesn't really say how do we do this? I mean, I don't know how you do it. How do you get someone to think differently? How do you get someone to open up their mind and draw the from whatever sources you need to draw to produce something fresh and new? I don't see how you can train this or preach to do this or force someone to do this. But he's simply putting a call for, it hurts him terribly, he says. It stabs his heart, that's the phrase he uses, to see the dryness and the basically the Jewish activity in this type of literature is in a deep stupor. Life is movement. Life is a constant renewal. And the culture, in that sense, a living culture, is always renewing and producing new things and taking things to greater heights. And he thinks that the Jewish culture, particularly the Jewish literature, is, again, in a state of paralysis, in a state of stupor, in a coma. So he doesn't really have any idea how to do this. He's just making an urgent plea. The other thing is that he's speaking, as I said, mainly to yeshiva students, and he wants to make it clear that, whatever, he's calling for this, investment in literary creativity and pushing the spiritual horizon further and further, but without changing one iota of Jewish practice and without giving up the traditional Jewish learning of, going over and learning thoroughly all the standard texts, the Talmud and the rest. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, and I've known personally some of the great rabbis of the past generation who were masters of the tradition, masters of the Talmud and the Tanakh and their commentators and so on, and still managed to write, tremendously creative and new and vibrant pieces of literature. But it's, sometimes it sounds like a bit of a cop out, to say that, I want to, push for new things, but hold on to the old. Well, how exactly do you do that? Again, he doesn't tell us. So, in brief, I just wanted to make a point here of how powerful this urge in him was, how aware he was of the power of literature. We know how books can change the public views on all sorts of issues, whether political or ethical or diplomatic, and he apparently was aware of it, and he was hoping that there would be some Jewish literature to his liking with regard to its religious and spiritual content that could do this and push the envelope further with regard to the Jewish public. He had this tremendous feelings, but I'm not sure that he had answers even in his day, and in our own day, where the written word is sort of been replaced by the virtual word, or maybe by the artificially fabricated word. I don't know, again, what we're supposed to do, but I think it's important to be aware of this aspect of Rav Kook, which, again, is unique to him and shows how what a strong heart he had, how deeply he felt about these sort of cultural issues. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.